So, did last night represent a new direction for Donald Trump? Did he sound like the great unifier? Let's bring in Daniel Dale, the Washington bureau chief for the Toronto Star. Daniel, good to see you again. Good to speak with you again. We did chat before the State of the Union address earlier this week on what we might watch for. Did it go as you expected with Donald Trump last night?
It basically did. I mean, what I expected was for him to make noises in the direction of unity and bipartisanship, and then more or less be the regular Donald Trump on immigration and other issues. And I think that's what we saw. You know, he spoke in the lofty vocabulary and sort of somber tone that he reserves basically only for this one night a year. But there were also a number of jabs at Democrats. Most notably, he urged Democrats not to investigate him. He said, you know, we can't have peace and prosperity or legislation even if you are doing investigation at the same time. And so I don't think this really changed anything about the direction of his presidency or how he'll be perceived.
Yeah, what's his message? Let's stay with his comments about it. I think the way he framed it was, look, essentially, you know, claiming single-handedly this rebirth in the American economy, calling it, I think he called it a miracle is underway with the U.S. economy, and it can only essentially be wrecked, I guess, if they proceed with investigating the president. How do you think that went over for people?
Very badly with Democrats, obviously. I mean, when you win the House of Representatives, as Democrats did in November, you gain oversight responsibilities, not only powers, but responsibilities. You know, they believe, and the framers of the U.S. Constitution believe, that the people in control of the House should conduct investigations, should conduct oversight of the administration. So Trump saying, you know, I want to work with you, but I can't work with you if you're doing investigations, sort of left them aghast. They were just like, that is not how our government works. You know, we can do both at the same time.
He asked for, I want to come back to Canada for just a second. He asked the Congress to go ahead and approve the new trade deal between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. Also asked for additional powers for the president to be able to unilaterally impose tariffs on countries if he chooses to do that. Was there anything here for Canada to be worried about, or have things changed at all?
I think it's the same old. I mean, he asked Congress to pass the trade deal. Congress is not moving quickly, but you know there was nothing new there. And then on this other tariff proposal, I think it's clear that is very unlikely to pass Congress. So I don't think the Canadian government will be too worried about that one.
Okay, anyone who expected a softening in his position on the border wall with Mexico had to be disappointed. How did he frame that issue?
The same way as always. You know, he said this is a crisis. It is cruel to tolerate illegal immigration. You know, he raised the subject of brutal murders by illegal immigrants, you know, savage MS-13, sadistic traffickers, so very vivid language of the kind we've heard from him. Basically suggested, you know, it's immoral not to build a wall on the border. And so this is the same rhetoric he's been using unsuccessfully for a month and beyond. And so again, I don't really know how that moves the needle for him on that issue.
Do you think he was setting the stage, and again, building on what he's been saying before, setting the stage to declare that national emergency and fund the wall on his own without congressional approval? Is that where we're headed?
It's very possible. That's a good point. I mean, he might have been using that language, you know, to preemptively build the case for declaring that emergency in 10 days. And, you know, and in which case he could go back to the public and say, look, I told you in the State of the Union, you know, there's a crisis. I asked Democrats to work with me. They're not working with me. And so I had to do this. I think the problem, though, is that literally every poll has shown that he is being blamed on this wall issue. You know, the public is not blaming Democrats for not giving in to him. They're blaming him for tying this demand to the funding of the U.S. government. And so I don't think he has a way out, just in strict political terms.
Right, but it seems by his remarks last night that if anything, he's decided that if he's going to try to make this happen, he's certainly not looking to back down. He sort of doubled down on why the wall is so urgently needed. So if he's losing that argument in the polls, he's decided, I guess he thinks he can still win it by going even harder at it.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, his bet is that he needs the loyalty of his base and the excitement of his base above all else. And so even in the face of polls that show that not only Democrats but independent voters are overwhelmingly opposed to his position, you know, his decision has been, well, okay, but I can win another election, with my people alone. And to get my people back on board or keep them on board, I need to fight like heck on the issue of immigration. And so a lot of strategists from both parties and Republican members of Congress, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, do not think this is wise. But Trump, as usual, is going with his gut instinct.
We're looking at Nancy Pelosi right now, and we'll just keep it there for a second. We have an image of her sort of reading along with the president's speech. She was fidgeting at times behind him, calming down reaction behind him at times, wincing at times. What was happening? I watched a lot of State of the Union addresses. What was happening with the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, while she was seated behind Donald Trump? What was happening there?
Well, she just didn't like a lot of what what he had to say. It's her job to set the cues for the Democrats sitting in front of Trump. When do they stand? When do they clap? When do they stay seated and stone faced? So she was making those decisions as he went. And also, I think some sort of theatrically, but some just very naturally reacting, to his jabs at her, his jabs at Democrats. So it was sort of fun, interesting theater just to watch her face through them.
Yeah, it was like she was following along. She'd occasionally pick up the speech to follow along to, I guess, find the next point in his remarks where she was either going to feel she had to sort of calm Democrats or display some sort of reaction of displeasure. Interesting to watch. Let's finish on this. If Donald Trump's desire was to convince or coerce his opponents into a, I guess, a less bumpy path forward, was he able to achieve that in any way?
I'm very doubtful. There was the sort of the nominal call toward unity. There were some generic, uncontroversial policy proposals, such as one on infrastructure, that he's been making to no effect for 2 years now. And then it was the same old on immigration. I think what would have been a real signal that he wanted to try something new with Democrats was if he made some sort of compromise offer on immigration, on the border wall. And that could have been a strong signal, I think, to Democrats and the public that, this is not the same old, this is a new Trump, he's pivoting toward the center. But he didn't do that, so despite his lofty language on bipartisanship, on that key policy issue, he was the same old Donald Trump.
All right, Daniel Dale from Washington joining us today. Thank you very much, Daniel, for your perspective. We'll talk again.
Thank you very much.